The system has not failed in 11 years. That is exactly why the owner is tempted to leave it alone. But the only technician who knows how to recover it is retiring Friday. The drawings are incomplete, and the next replacement component may take 6 weeks to locate. So here is the uncomfortable question. Do you replace a system that still works, or wait until it makes the decision for you?
That is a very real fork in the road, and the retirement date matters less than what it reveals. If one person's memory is the recovery plan, the system has been fragile for a while.
Exactly. What breaks if this goes down? That question should come before how old is it?
Welcome to Built, Wired, and Secured. I'm Alex Morgan. Today we're looking at that decision. When building technology should be replaced, upgraded, stabilized, or deliberately left in service. With me are Michael Harrington, who works from the property and risk perspective, and James Rogers, a facilities and reliability leader. Gentlemen, good to have you here.
Glad to be here, Alex.
Happy to be here. And I like that example because the system is not necessarily unsafe or useless. It may simply be harder to support than the operation can afford.
That distinction is the heart of this episode. Do not approve a replacement because a calendar says so, and do not defer because the system has not failed. Approve the path you can explain, test, support, and recover. Michael, how much should age influence that decision?
Age is a signal, not a verdict. It should prompt a closer look at condition, supportability, recovery, capacity, and consequence. A well-maintained older system with accurate records and available expertise may be easier to operate than a newer system nobody fully understands.
Yes, but the calendar still matters.
It does, as a prompt to investigate, not as an automatic replacement date.
Right. Older equipment may have fewer support options, fewer people familiar with it, or less room to adapt when the building changes. But I have also seen equipment older than some of the people maintaining it perform reliably because the maintenance program was disciplined. Reliability starts with disciplined maintenance. It also starts with knowing what you have, why it matters, and how to recover it when the normal path is unavailable.
So the first question is not replace or keep. It is, what kind of problem are we actually seeing?
Exactly. Is the system getting harder to maintain, harder to understand, harder to observe, or harder to recover? Those can lead to different decisions. Better training may address one. A targeted retrofit may address another. Full replacement may be justified when the underlying support path is no longer credible.
And leave it alone needs a better name. I would call it deliberate deferral. It means the current state is understood, someone owns the decision, temporary protections are defined, and there is a trigger for revisiting it.
Not ignoring it, managing it.
Exactly.
James, what do you notice first when a system is still operating but starting to become a liability?
The workarounds. Someone says, we always do it this way, and then explains a process that exists nowhere except in their head. A normal command works only if it is entered in a particular sequence. A technician keeps an old laptop in a drawer because it is the only reliable way to connect. None of those details may create a crisis today, but together they show operational debt.
Wait, back up. Would you treat every workaround as a replacement signal?
No, a workaround is evidence, not a verdict. I ask whether it is documented, repeatable, and safe for the next person. If it depends on one individual's memory, then the risk is knowledge failure, not necessarily equipment failure.
That knowledge issue is often invisible in a capital meeting. The equipment appears functional, so the exposure is discounted. But if the person who understands the workaround is unavailable during a critical event, the recovery time changes immediately. From an operational standpoint, supportability is part of the asset.
A concrete example might help. James?
In one occupied office building, a control system still handled the morning startup. Nothing dramatic was happening, but operators did not trust several of its alarms, so they manually verified 3 important conditions every morning. That added about 20 minutes, depended on one experienced technician, and created no obvious failure report. The team first documented the sequence and improved the status information before deciding whether a platform replacement was justified.
So the first investment was understanding.
Yes, and that work exposed something else. One proposed change would have made routine maintenance harder. The team found that before the project was complete, not during the first overnight call. The best day in operations is the one nobody notices, and good planning protects that ordinary day.
Curious. What about visibility from the property side? When does a lack of observability become a business concern rather than just a technical annoyance?
When people discover problems late, if alarms are unreliable, logs are incomplete, or status information is available only by physically checking equipment, a small issue has more time to become a comfort complaint, a service interruption, or a difficult response for the person on duty.
Here's the downstream impact. The building may continue operating, but confidence falls. More manual checks appear, response times stretch, and leadership cannot tell whether a quiet system is healthy or simply not reporting trouble. Tenants feel this immediately when the result is a disruption, even if they never see the technology behind it.
The building also changes around the technology. A renovation, a new schedule, a connected system, or a staffing change can turn an old limitation into a new operational problem.
That is the part people miss. The equipment may still perform its original job, but its dependencies have multiplied. One small change can have a surprisingly large effect because nobody has a current picture of how the pieces interact.
Let's put two choices on the table. You have aging controls, incomplete documentation, 2 trained technicians, and a planned building renovation in 18 months. The system can run manually for about 4 hours, but a failure during occupied operations would be disruptive. Do you retrofit now or replace the platform?
I would not begin by choosing either one. I would stabilize the current operation, document the sequences, verify the manual fallback, and test what information the team can actually see. Then I would use the 18-month renovation window to define the transition. A targeted retrofit could make sense if it removes a specific failure point and improves visibility without creating new dependencies.
I agree with the sequence, but I am cautious about calling that buying time.
Because time can disappear?
Exactly. A retrofit can remove a real weakness, but if nobody assigns a destination, the temporary bridge becomes the permanent architecture. It is fine until it fails, and then the organization discovers that it spent effort without reducing the underlying uncertainty.
Fair correction. Let me put it differently. A retrofit needs an exit condition. What risk are we reducing? What are we learning? What decision will we be able to make 6 or 12 months from now that we cannot make today?
That is the useful distinction. Retrofit is not automatically a compromise. It is a strategy, and the strategy needs a purpose that can be tested.
And the comparison should include more than the equipment. What disruption does each path create? What must remain available during the work? Can the workforce support the result? Which dependencies remain? What happens if the project is interrupted halfway through? What breaks if this goes down during the transition?
That last question is easy to overlook because teams picture the finished state.
Yes, and the temporary state can be the harder one. During a transition, people are learning, records may be changing, and old and new procedures can coexist. Technology should support operations, not complicate them. If the new result is impressive, but routine maintenance becomes harder, the job is not finished.
Who needs to be involved before that decision is made?
Facilities, IT, security, and the people accountable for continuity. Facilities understands physical sequences and access. IT understands connectivity, identity, monitoring, and change control. Security understands response workflows. They should meet before a preferred solution hardens into a project plan.
And maintenance staff should be there early, not invited to training at the end. They know which panels are reachable, which spaces cannot be interrupted, and which procedures are realistic on a busy day. A plan that requires someone to reach an impossible location during an active operation is not a reliable plan.
And access is part of the life cycle, not a construction detail.
Exactly. Thank you.
If a technician cannot safely inspect, isolate, test, and restore the equipment during normal operations, maintainability has already been compromised.
Most organizations cannot refresh every aging system at once. How should leaders prioritize?
Rank by consequence, not by annoyance. Start with what happens if the system becomes unavailable, inaccurate, or impossible to recover. Then ask how quickly the impact spreads, how long the organization can operate manually, and whether there is a credible fallback. A system that generates frequent minor complaints may deserve attention, but a quiet system with no recovery path may deserve attention sooner.
I would add reversibility. Can you test the change without putting the whole operation at risk? Can you run old and new procedures long enough to compare them? If the result is not what you expected, can you safely return to the previous state? Preventative maintenance beats emergency repairs every time, and a reversible transition gives the team room to learn.
Would you put acceptable risk in writing, even when the answer is to defer?
Absolutely. State the current condition, known limitations, consequence of failure, temporary controls, and trigger for reconsideration. That prevents a deferred decision from disappearing into a spreadsheet. It also gives leadership a common basis for discussing urgency instead of relying on whoever makes the strongest case in the meeting.
And exercise the plan. Trust the process does not mean trusting a binder nobody has opened in 3 years. Who responds first? Who has authority to make a change? Where are the current records? What does a new technician need to know on day 1?
Let's look at a decision that struggled, without assigning blame.
In one project, the visible equipment was updated, but the surrounding dependencies were not fully understood. Access responsibilities were unclear, the final records did not match the installed condition, and staff were uncertain which alarms required action. The project had technically reached completion, but the operation had not reached confidence.
Installation is not operational readiness.
Right. Readiness includes tested procedures, clear ownership, maintenance access, trained people, usable records, and a transition plan that respects the building's actual schedule. Otherwise, the organization may exchange one uncertainty for another.
And sometimes the best first move is not a major project. It is a disciplined inspection, a current sequence of operations, or a test of the manual fallback. Those actions can reveal whether you have a replacement problem, a documentation problem, or a maintenance problem.
If someone listening manages several aging systems, what can they do in the next 30 minutes?
Choose one system. Write down what it supports, who depends on it, and what breaks if this goes down. Record the known workarounds, available expertise, documentation quality, recovery time, and dependencies on adjacent systems. Do not begin with a replacement solution. Begin by making the exposure visible.
Then schedule a short review with facilities, IT, and the people who respond when the system misbehaves. Ask what must not change, what can be tested before a transition, and whether the proposed result will be easier to maintain than the current one.
And if the team cannot answer those questions?
That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to investigate before the next failure, project, or maintenance cycle makes the decision for you. Deferral can be responsible when it is informed and bounded. It becomes risky when it is simply the absence of a budget request or the hope that someone will figure it out later.
And remember, the answer can change. A system that is reasonable to leave in service this year may need a retrofit after a renovation, a staffing change, or a support change. Life cycle planning is not a one-time judgment. It is a continuing conversation with the operation.
From an operational standpoint, the strongest decision is explainable. Leaders should be able to say what they know, what they do not know, what consequence they are accepting, and what they are doing next.
The best day in operations is the one nobody notices. Good life cycle work protects that ordinary day by preparing before the extraordinary one arrives.
Before your next planned maintenance cycle, choose one aging system and schedule a 30-minute review. Write down the consequence of failure, the workaround people rely on, the recovery path, the dependencies around it, and the trigger that would change your decision. Then decide whether replacement, retrofit, stabilization, or deliberate deferral is the most responsible path.
And if the decision is to wait, wait deliberately.
That is how you keep a manageable risk from becoming an emergency.
That wraps up this episode of Built, Wired, and Secured. Today we explored how to decide whether aging building technology should be replaced, retrofitted, stabilized, or deliberately left in service, and why consequence and supportability matter more than age alone. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. Until next time, make sure the systems you're responsible for are built to last, wired with intention, and secured for the real world.